Hello, and welcome back to the Daily English Podcast. My name is Ben, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Emily. How are you today, Emily?
Hi, Ben. Hi, everyone. I'm doing really well, thank you. I'm excited for today's episode. It's one of those topics that everyone thinks about at some point, right?
Absolutely. And for our listeners, today we have a really big question. How do you find out who you are? Or, to put it another way, how do you discover your true self? It sounds deep, but don't worry. We'll make it easy and fun.
That's right. Have you ever wondered, who am I? I think everyone has at some point. Maybe you're starting a new job, moving to a new place, or just lying in bed at night thinking. It's a big question, not just for English learners, but for everyone.
And that's what makes today's episode really special. We're going to talk about ways to find out who you are, step by step. We'll share personal stories, explain some useful words and phrases, and give you tips you can use in your own life.
So if you've ever felt lost or just curious about what makes you, you, then you're in the right place.
Before we jump in, let's quickly introduce ourselves for any new listeners. I'm Ben, I'm from London, and I love learning about psychology and people. I've actually asked myself, who am I? Many times. Especially when I move to a new country.
And I'm Emily from New York City. I'm a language teacher, and I've always been curious about identity, like, why are we the way we are? When I was a teenager, I asked myself a million questions about my personality, my dreams, and all those things.
I think those questions are normal, right? Sometimes, even as adults, we still wonder about them. So Emily, do you remember the first time you seriously thought about who you are?
Oh, definitely. I think it was when I started college, actually. Suddenly, I was living away from home, meeting all kinds of new people. I felt like I could be anyone, but I also wondered, wait, who am I really? It was exciting, but also kind of scary.
I know that feeling. For me, it was when I moved to Germany for a year. New culture, new language, new everything. I realized that some things about me changed, and some things stayed the same. It made me think a lot about my identity.
That's a great point. Sometimes being in a new place can help you learn about yourself. Listeners, maybe you've experienced that too, moving to a new city, learning English, or meeting new people. These are all opportunities to discover more about who you are.
Exactly. So let's set the stage for today. We're going to talk about what it means to find out who you are, why it's important, and some practical ways to explore your identity.
And we'll look at the challenges, the benefits, and even some funny or surprising stories along the way.
So let's begin with the basics. Emily, how would you define finding yourself? What does that even mean?
Good question. For me, finding yourself means understanding what you like, what you believe in, what makes you happy or sad, and what kind of person you want to become. It's about discovering your values, your strengths, and your dreams.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's also about learning what's important to you. Like, do you care more about family, friends, work, or something else? And sometimes it means asking yourself tough questions, right?
Totally. And it's not always easy. Sometimes you think you know yourself, but then something happens and you realize you've changed. Or maybe you learn something new about yourself that surprises you.
Exactly. I remember when I started working my first job. I thought I wanted to be in finance, but after a few months I realized, wow, this is not for me. It was a bit of a crisis, but it also helped me find out more about what I wanted.
I had a similar experience when I started teaching. At first I was nervous and didn't know if I'd be good at it, but after a while, I realized I loved helping people learn. That's when I thought, maybe teaching is part of who I am.
So, let's talk about some ways people can start to find out who they are. What do you think is the first step?
I think the first step is self-reflection. That means taking time to think about your feelings, your likes and dislikes, and your experiences. Maybe you keep a journal or just spend a few minutes each day thinking about your day.
Yeah, self-reflection is huge. Sometimes I just go for a walk and think about my life. It helps me clear my mind and understand myself better. Listeners, maybe you do something similar, or maybe you can try it.
Another way is to try new things. Sometimes you don't know what you like until you try it. For example, I never thought I'd enjoy painting, but when I tried it, I loved it. Now, painting is part of my identity.
That's a great point. So let's make a little list for our listeners. Here are some steps to help find out who you are. First, self-reflection. Second, try new things. Third, talk to people you trust about your feelings and ideas. What else, Emily?
I'd add being honest with yourself. Sometimes we pretend to like things because other people do, but deep down, we know they're not for us. It's okay to be different.
Absolutely, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Sometimes you have to try something and fail to really learn about yourself. I once tried to learn guitar. I was terrible. But I found out I preferred listening to music rather than playing it.
Ha ha. Me too. I tried yoga once and almost fell over, but at least I learned I need to work on my balance.
So, let's talk about some challenges people face when trying to find out who they are. What do you think is difficult about this process?
Well, sometimes people feel pressure from family or society to be a certain way. For example, maybe your family wants you to be a doctor, but you want to be an artist. That's tough.
Yeah, and in some cultures, it's even harder. Like in my family, there was always this idea that everyone should be practical. Get a good, safe job, don't take risks. But I wanted to try something creative. It took me a while to accept that.
That's really common. Another challenge is fear. Fear of failing, fear of disappointing others, or even fear of not knowing what you want. Listeners, maybe you felt like this too.
And sometimes people think they have to figure it all out quickly. But actually, finding yourself can take years, and that's okay. It's normal to change over time.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a race. I think the important thing is to keep learning and growing, and not to be too hard on yourself.
Let's look at some benefits of finding out who you are. For example, when you know yourself better, it's easier to make decisions. You can choose the right job, the right friends, or even the right hobbies.
Yeah, and it helps you feel more confident. When you know your strengths, you can use them to solve problems or help others. It also makes you happier, I think.
Definitely. And when you're confident about who you are, it's easier to handle difficult situations. Like if someone criticizes you, you don't feel as bad because you know your own value.
That's so true. And you can build stronger relationships because you're honest about your feelings and needs.
Let's touch on some misconceptions. Some people think finding yourself means you have to be alone, like go on a long trip by yourself. But actually, you can learn about yourself in many ways, even just by talking with friends.
Yeah, or some people think it's selfish to focus on yourself, but I think it's important. If you know yourself well, you can help others better.
Okay, let's give our listeners some actionable tips. Emily, what's one practical thing someone can do today to start learning about themselves?
I'd say try writing in a journal, even just a few sentences each day about your feelings, your experiences, or something new you learned. It helps you see patterns over time.
Great idea. Another tip, ask for feedback from people you trust. Sometimes we can't see our own strengths, but our friends or family can.
And maybe set small goals for yourself. For example, try a new activity this week or talk to someone new. Afterward, ask yourself, how did I feel? Did I enjoy it?
That's really good advice. And remember, listeners, it's okay if you don't have all the answers right away.
Definitely. Finding yourself is a lifelong journey. Enjoy it, and don't be afraid to change your mind.
Let's make this interactive. Imagine you're in a new city where nobody knows you. What's the first thing you would do? Would you try something new or stick to what you know? Think about that for a second.
Or here's a challenge. This week, try one new thing, big or small. Maybe it's tasting a new food, or talking to someone in English, or reading about something you're curious about. Afterward, write down how you felt.
And if you want, share your story with us. We love hearing from our listeners.
Let's do a quick vocabulary highlight. Ben, what words or phrases should we explain today?
All right, let's start with self-reflection. This means thinking carefully about your own thoughts, feelings, and actions. For example, after the test, I did some self-reflection to see how I could improve.
Another word is identity. That means who you are or how you see yourself. For example, learning a new language can change your identity.
Good one. How about values? These are the beliefs or ideas that are most important to you. For example, honesty is one of my values.
And strengths. These are the things you are good at, like her strength is making people laugh.
Let's add journey. It can mean a trip, but it also means the process of discovering or learning something over time. Like, finding yourself is a journey.
I like that word, a journey. It makes it sound exciting.
Let's explain feedback too. Feedback means opinions or advice you get from others. For example, I asked my teacher for feedback on my essay.
And finally, challenge can be both a noun and a verb. As a noun, it means something difficult. Learning English is a challenge. As a verb, I want to challenge myself by trying new things.
Great explanations. And a fun fact for our listeners, the word identity comes from the Latin word identitas, meaning the same. So your identity is what makes you unique, but also, in some ways, what stays the same about you.
That's so interesting. English has a lot of words like that, with roots in Latin. It's fun to look up where words come from, isn't it?
It really is, and it can help you remember new words too.
So let's summarize what we talked about today. Finding out who you are is about self-reflection, trying new things, talking to people you trust, and being honest with yourself. It's not always easy, but it's worth it.
We shared some personal stories, talked about challenges and benefits, and gave you some tips to try. Remember, it's okay to change and grow. Your journey is unique.
I hope our listeners feel inspired to learn more about themselves. If you have a story about finding yourself, please share it with us. We love to hear from you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or tell a friend about the Daily English Podcast.
And remember, learning English and learning about yourself is a journey. Enjoy every step. See you next time.
Bye, everyone. Take care and keep discovering who you are.